What's going on, guys? Happy Monday. Welcome back to the Truck Parking Clubhouse. I'm your host, Mike Lombard. Welcome back for another week. We got a great conversation we're going to have in front of us. But before we get rolling, today is a holiday week. I know it's busy out there, especially busy out there if you're driving. I know driving around the summer holidays gets a little tough. Traffic's a little here and there, depending on where you're going with holiday travelers. There could be rush hour and times where you don't normally expect, especially if you're on the East Coast on 95. So no matter where you're going this holiday week, again, we've got it rolling at the bottom of the screen. That promo code July4, July, all lowercase, the number 4, all one word. If you are going home or you are just out on the road and you know that truck stops are going to be full, check out the Truck Parking Club app. Go to truckparkingclub.com. You can use that code, $50 of free parking your way. So make sure to use that promo code. And again, if you're not subscribed to Taillights, that just dropped tonight at 7 p.m. We're going to break into some of the topics on Taillights, which is actually crazy. I just got an email response. Taillights went out 30 minutes ago, and I've already gotten a reader feedback from it. So if you're not subscribed for some hot driver focus related news, subscribe in there. There are weekly discounts and weekly promo codes for you guys to help you get parked wherever you're at over the road. And that is every week. We are dropping that newsletter every single Monday at 7 p.m. But let's get right into the clubhouse today. Got an awesome trucker who's joining us live today. He's one of our partners. He's out there helping drivers get parked. I'm going to bring him right up into the studio. His name is Wolfgang Wedlin. How we doing, brother?
Doing great, man. How you doing?
Fantastic, dude. I'm excited to have you on. Good to talk to you. I know we were talking before you came on. We've had some of you've run into a social media dilemma with some technology issues. So It's good to have you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to be working with you guys as well to try to remedy this. I don't want to call it a crisis. It seems almost disingenuous. The problem has gotten so much bigger than that. But yeah, I'm excited to be here and excited to be spreading the word about Truck Parking Club for sure.
Dude, absolutely, man. We're going to actually dive into some of those topics at the towards the end of this live stream, because it's like you said, the problem continues to get worse, and I dropped some great examples on kind of what it looks like taking on the truck parking crisis from the macro level, like zooming out at 30,000 feet and then coming back to see who's actually solving the problems and kind of the road it's going to take. But before we kind of dive into those topics, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Where are you from? What got you into trucking?
Yeah, so obviously most people, the first thing they're curious about is like my name. Like, this guy's name is Wolfgang, but he has a southern accent. Like, what's going on with that? So my dad moved over here from Germany. So he was an immigrant in America, built a life here, and so I was named after him. Really common name in Europe, just not here in the States. But yeah, I grew up always wanting to be a truck driver. There was a time when I was young where I was obsessed with some other facets of the transportation industry. Like, I wanted to be an airline pilot. I wanted to be a railroad engineer. But trucking was like where I really settled at. From the time I was probably like 12 years old, that's kind of what I wanted to do. When I turned 18, I wasn't able to have any like programs within the state of Tennessee where I live to drive within the state, because you can only do that until you're 21. So I just started driving a forklift. I was like, I just want to be around trucks. I want to drive something. So I drove a forklift until I turned 21. The day I turned 21, got my CDL, which was like early 2020. And I've been on the road ever since. So knocking on the door of 6 years now. And when I got on the road, I quickly noticed, like, some of these issues out here. And I thought, for a long time, they kind of stewed in my mind. I compartmentalized them, but they kept getting worse. And then I created a TikTok account, started posting some videos, accumulated a pretty good following, which hopefully that'll pick up again soon. My goal was to just try to leave the industry. You said it best: leave the industry better one day than it was when I came. Right. So that's still my goal. This is like a huge passion of mine, and I'm like everybody else. I'm not talking from a perspective of somebody who's never driven a truck like some guys are. I know, you're a former truck driver, and I'm out here living it. I'm actually in the truck right now at a truck stop hanging out. This is my life, and I'm very passionate about it. And I want to see the industry improve. So that's kind of my story. That's my goal. And hopefully that can come to fruition.
Dude, absolutely. And yeah, I can say, I mean, I just got another DOT physical to keep my CDL active. And I know that the days of hauling freight are never really over for I feel like a driver until like it really comes a certain time. So I'm definitely not counting out the fact that I'll find myself behind the wheel in one way, in some form or another, uh,
Absolutely.
down the road. Especially with it, with some other stuff I got going on. But so you decided, number one, got to say what's up to our guy Ralph. Ralph is another gentleman. He was with us last week. We were talking trucking,
Right.
but it, it's so the one of the main reasons you started making content was because you recognized some problems in the industry and you wanted to talk about them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much the sum of it. And in my mind, the way I look at it is, every truck driver has like a blue parrot or a headset, and I would get on calls with my buddies every single day, and we would like talk till the cows come home about these issues, right? And to me, these are issues that if if left unattended, they're just going to eventually um, sorry. These are issues that, if left unattended, they're going to cause the demise of the trucking industry. I mean, truck parking being the number one thing, right? Like, you cannot. I mean, if you can do 2+2, you know that you cannot continue having this trajectory where you just keep adding trucks on the road but not adding parking, right? It doesn't work out. And I thought, well, at the bare minimum, I can post some content. And for whatever reason, TikTok seemed to really enjoy the content. The algorithm did it, pushed it out. A lot of people saw it, and I got a pretty good following. And I just really enjoyed being able to connect with other drivers and let people know, like, hey, these issues are not going unheard of. That's the thing for me that was so demoralizing for so long, is like the truck parking issue. It seemed like nobody even knew it existed, right? There were so many people who I would try to explain like how hard it is to find a parking spot, and how it sucks after working all day to not have somewhere to just like lay your head down and sleep. And people were like, oh well, I get what you're saying, but like nobody really actually, unless you experience it, you don't know what it's like. And so I felt like through social media, I could also kind of be a voice for people who, are feeling the same way, right? So, yeah.
It's crazy how well, because number one, it's awesome that you did start making content, and I always encourage people. We can't go backwards with social media. We can't put the lid back on Pandora's box. And I understand that I think that there's nothing wrong with taking breaks. Like I just did the Texas water safari. I essentially was kind of phoneless for 3 days, and you get like kind of a dopamine reset. And so I'm not saying that we need to be kind of glued to content and glued to social media at all times, but we're never going to go back to the before times. So, and I've said this multiple times, we need to use it. We need to use it as it's designed for its best purposes. It's just like food, actually. In some ways, a crazy comparison. Like food is fuel. We need food to survive, and there's ways to where you can consume certain types of food that are going to benefit you, help you grow and retain muscle, or you can be eating different types of food and too much, and it's going to cause you to be unhealthy. And social media is kind of the same way. You can use the tool as it's intended to build community and have conversations, or you can use too much of it and it can end up, kind of rotting your brain. So it's awesome to see you kind of get involved and want to rally community behind this. And we've seen, and it's actually can start change. I'd be remiss to not bring this up and let you know. Recently, the Secretary of Transportation went on Freight Waves What the Truck and specifically called out vocal truck drivers on Twitter for why they're having the conversations they're having, why they're making certain rule changes, why they're bringing up the non-domiciled CDLs, and also why that there's funding going into truck parking. And he specifically mentions vocal truckers on Twitter who are in the reply. So it's like there's ways to use social media that could benefit the industry by rallying behind community and having these conversations.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that I heard Sean Duffy say as well. And it's like, it's really, really cool to have our voice finally heard. And that was another big thing. If you got to start somewhere, right? I mean, you can walk across the country if you just start with like one step, right? And taking that first step is the goal. And then once you do that, you can grow a platform eventually to where maybe you can start getting some people who can actually make a difference to pick up on what you're doing. And I think Sean Duffy is the guy that's actually going to be in a position to make some change, and he seems to be doing exactly that. And I think that's great.
Absolutely. So I got to ask you, when did you first hear about Truck Parking Club?
So I saw Hunter in some ads because he does a really good job with some of the sponsored content that Truck Parking Club puts out. Whipping the van around. I believe that's Hunter that does that. And that was probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago, where I first kind of saw it popping off, and I thought, who is this guy driving around in this yellow van that's talking about truck parking, right? And so interesting. I didn't mention this when you asked kind of about my background. I don't want to be too long-winded, but so I was working before I went back on the road. So I was on the road full time before, but for the last like 2.5 years, up until October of 2024, I was still kind of over the road regional, but I was with a company that kind of had us staying in hotels. So truck parking never really was that big of an issue for me for the better part. So I kind of like took a step back, and then when I went back on the road in October of 2024, in my own truck here, I realized it has exploded like insane, like it's crazy. And I had a few conversations on my social media about paid parking. That's another thing that people are really, kind of either they're really split one way or the other. Should we pay to park? Should we not? And I also zoomed out and looked at this issue of like, hey, is the government going to come solve the issue here? Are they going to save the day? Is it going to have to be private business? And I think the answer is private business 100%, and not just corporate truck stops and small mom and pop places putting new truck stops in, because those are not happening at anywhere near the rate that we would need to even remotely put a dent in this problem. And then I saw what you guys are doing, which was a totally fresh approach to this issue, a totally new approach to this issue. And you guys are taking the money from the paid parking and reinvesting it back into growing the network and building new parking infrastructure. So that to me is a no-brainer, obviously. And so that's kind of how I found out about Truck Parking Club. And then once I found out about it, I was like, wow, this seems to actually be like the light at the end of the tunnel that otherwise I wasn't seeing to fix this problem.
And what's really cool to think, as you said, a lot of people don't know that this is an issue. I live here in Central Texas, and whenever I'm out with friends, people who don't work in the industry, and I'm very active in the running community. They ask what I do, and when I explain to them, and I have to explain to them, hey, I was like, have you heard of Airbnb? And I'm like, picture that, but tractor trailer parking. They're like, that's that. They're like, that's crazy how niche that is. And I'm like, it's funny that it's a niche, but like the entire country depends on trucking. And it's like, yeah, it's a niche, but and once I explained to them the stats about how there's one parking spot for every 11 trucks, and I'm like, have you driven at night at all? Like, do you look at the on off ramps? They're like, yeah, they are on the on off ramps. I just thought that was normal. I was like, well, actually, roughly 50 people die per year because of that. There's over 4,000 accidents. They're like, oh, that is a problem. And I'm like, yeah, and what's crazy is, as we've brought on new property members who are also learning about this issue, because a lot of our property members are people who aren't from within the industry either, and they're not only awoke by, they're not like awakened by this massive issue we have in the industry. They see it and they're like, and they kind of want to develop their a business around it. We just brought on a property recently. We uploaded a video, and the gentleman, the property owner, he's going to be bringing food trucks onto his property for the local community. He's putting in some necessities, like stuff you would need for your truck, whether it be windshield wiper blades. I don't want to name the video word for word, but he's going to put in like vending machines for like stuff that you would need for your truck. And he wouldn't have done this or kind of expanded on this if it kind of wasn't for an enterprise or a company like Truck Parking Club coming in. So it's become, it's becoming another sort of marketplace for other people to not only pitch in and help a real problem, but also get into business and into their local community. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think, like you said, and like I said, I think that the first, thing is how shocked people are when they find out about this. And the fact that, you mentioned it just a second ago, people, who are not in the industry, when you bring up to them, like, do you ever see the trucks? parked along every available piece of real estate on the side of the road at night, right? And to most people, this problem is so deep rooted, they're just like, oh, I thought that was like how it is. I thought that was normal, right? I think that's a really interesting point. It's become the norm. And you are right. One of the big reasons why you're allowed to park on ramps is for safety reasons, right? There are, a lot of deaths that happen every single year because of that. And for truck drivers, it's to me, it kind of feels like the walls are closing in a way, because when you start running out of time, even if you've tried to trip plan, and you start having to think about, well, do I violate my hours of service, or do I park on this ramp and then get a ticket when I get woken up, or do I park on this curb at a truck stop where I'm also going to get woken up all night asked to move, or do I park at this Walmart where I'm going to have a barnacle on my windshield or a boot on my wheel when I wake up? Like it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem, but I'll tell you what's a huge relief is when you can open up an app like the Truck Parking Club app and literally just have somewhere to go. You know for a fact that the network has grown so much that most of the time, like 90% of the time, you're going to have somewhere within like a stone's throw from you that you are guaranteed to have a parking space at, and that's a huge relief.
Yeah, I can give a testimony straight out of that. I mean, from Austin. I mean, in like pre Truck Parking Club, between New Braunfels and Gerald, essentially there's essentially nothing. Like there's one pilot and Mustang Ridge off of a toll road. So again, even if you want to get to that pilot, you have to be a traveler on the SH-130 toll road, which costs money, and so you're already on a toll road, something that's costing you. And if you're a company driver, I guess it doesn't matter that much if you're having to pay the SH-130 toll. But if you're, the SH-130 toll road is like over $100 if you're traveling the whole length, which the majority of trucks are. And so you're having to pay just to get to that pilot. That pilot is ridiculously small, with not the greatest parking lot in the world. And so there's kind of nothing. And just for there to be about, I believe there's about 4 or 5 properties between kind of like in the Creedmoor, like between Austin now and Gerald, there's like 4 or 5 that is just like, if you knew you were kind of SOL in this area, I know for a fact that the 2 properties right by me are going to have a spot.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like, I'll tell you, I think I shot you a text and told you this, just like, I mean, 2 nights ago, I was in Waterloo, Iowa, and that's a huge truck driving town, a lot of industry in the area. And while there are a few truck stops, they fill up really quick. And it was like 5 p.m. I pulled up the app and I was thinking, well, I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere, Iowa, probably not going to find something. I pull up the app and there's literally a place I can see the location. It's at a Freedom Truck Wash in Waterloo. And I'm like, wait, that's the place? Like, that's how close it is, And I'm not saying, like, truck parking clubs are always going to have a place that convenient, but it's hyper convenient to just be able to say, hey, I'm gonna go over there, park, and I don't have to deal with this. Like for me, that's the big. I just want to disconnect at the end of the day, like all of us do, right? You put your time in, you just want to disconnect for a little bit, recharge your batteries, get some rest. And you don't want to deal with this like bloodbath at the truck stops where there's people piled up on top of each other, guys backing into each other, 4 ways on, people blowing the horn. It's a whole deal. It's like being in New York City and you're just like, God, I just want to stop and like go to bed. And I pulled up, booked a spot, drove right over there, and I had the place to myself for the night. It was well lit, clean, really nice facility. And like, to me, that is the value, part of the value in using this network that you guys have built. The other part of it is your money that you're spending to park is going back in, it's being reinvested into continuing to grow this network, right? That's the big thing about this. I mean, that's why I love what you guys have done so much. That's why a lot of people are opposed, I think, to paid parking at corporate truck stops, because you pull in, the lots are about to bust your oil pan or your tires because they're so in such deplorable condition. There's no lighting hardly, and everything's overpriced. There's never any hot food, and it's like, where is this money that we're paying for you to, like, maybe if you were like paving your lots, or you were putting it back into the facilities, or like maybe expanding the parking infrastructure you have, that would be one thing. But when you're actually paying to park and the money's going towards a system like you guys have to kind of reinvent the wheel, so to speak, with the truck parking issue and trying to solve it. And I mean, you guys are showing results. I mean, every single week you guys are like adding new locations. I think that's great. I think it's there's 50% of me that's like, hey, I really like this because the convenience where I can just say, hey, screw this, I'm not dealing with these truck stops, let's go use Truck Parking Club. And the other 50% is like, I actually like booking with you guys because I know that the funds I spend are getting reinvested back into continuing to fix this problem.
I think that's one of the first times I've ever heard it spoken that way, because it's the same reason why, and I'm glad you said it, because it's the same reason why, like, supporting Truck Parking Club is the same reason you would support a local business in your community, and I'll stand by that because of exactly what you just said. It keeps the wheels turning for us to find more properties to put on the platform for, because even though we have properties from coast to coast, and yes, nationwide, across the United States, Truck Parking Club itself is still a relatively small business that is completely mission focused. And I need to, especially for the live viewers, I need to kind of reiterate how bought in members of this team are, especially on the customer service side, which by any means, the customer service team is staffed by former drivers. And, when it comes to a service based industry, so when it comes to customer service, left and right across this country, businesses are offshoring or nearshoring
Yeah.
the idea of customer service. They are sending that to the Philippines, South America, wherever they might be. And I mean, no disrespect to people in those countries, but that's how mission focused Truck Parking Club is where the mission has to do with the truck parking crisis. And it's so mission focused that we have people who have skin in the game on that mission, to where they know and care about it, also being the ones out there. And that's kind of what jiving with a brand like Truck Parking Club does. That's well said and well put. And the best part is as we continue to grind out and get more properties on board, because we're gonna dive into some of these kind of local NIMBY roadblocks in a minute. As we get more properties on board with existing real estate, so not building anything new infrastructure. And it's great, we have this federal money that's going into new truck parking infrastructure. We've come to learn that federal fund. So, when we argue between paid and free parking, even the free parking comes at a cost, at a taxpayer expense, whether it be federal or state level. We're finding that it costs about $100,000 per spot, for that thing. So using this existing real estate. So as we add more properties onto the platform and the network, what you're going to see is it becomes more competitive. And when things become more competitive, you start to see the prices of things go down, and that's industry wide. So that's not just Truck Parking Club. You're going to see that's just basic economics. You're going to see that throughout the entire network of truck parking, and you're going to see more free parking because of it, because businesses are going to need to do what they need to do to become more competitive for occupancy.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I'll use, and I don't want to bash any particular brands, but there's a corporate truck stop out there. They're actively, currently moving most of their facilities to completely vacant lots. There's a location in Louisiana, Greencastle, Pennsylvania. I mean, there's a few of them I can name, where Cartersville, Georgia, where these locations were previously basically mostly free and kind of some paid, and they're now you have to get a ticket to get into the lot, right? And the entire lot is paid, and so it's a really, really good point that you brought up that I've not actually thought about really, is the fact that it is true, as people get tired of pulling in, paying $25, getting absolute subpar services, subpar facilities, they're going to start looking elsewhere, and look to places like Truck Parking Club. And the only way for these facilities who have kind of sold themselves out just in the name of trying to make a quick buck, from truck parking, that aren't actually trying to fix the problem, because obviously nobody wants to give money to that. They want to give money to networks like you guys who are actually, again, reinvesting that money. They're going to have no choice but to try to come back and say, hey, sorry, guys, we're not going to do that anymore. Maybe we're going to have some free spots now and try to get business back to us. And then also, I think another good point is, the customers that you guys work with, customers may not be the right word, but the property owners that you guys work with, who allow us to park on their property, I'm sure they make a commission as well, and I think that's great also, because a lot, it's re-stimulating different aspects of the economy through that as well. I mean, these are people who, a lot of the places I've seen, these are private landowners, small business owners, And I think it's really cool that these guys can kind of fix a problem, and they can also help, stimulate their business and keep that going through truck parking with property that, otherwise would have just been sitting vacant, doing nothing for them.
Absolutely. And you kind of diving into the topics of the newsletter, because we talked about this. We call it the truck parking crisis because it's what it is what it is. I mean, I just did a piece a couple weeks ago. That it had happened a couple of years ago, but there was an accident in Illinois where it was determined after the investigation that trucks parked illegally on off ramps is what led to a certain accident in Illinois. And so something like that, it deserves the word crisis next to it. But, I put these right in the newsletter today, and this is kind of what the truck parking crisis is up against because you'd think it'd be as simple, and you're right. So you said earlier that the private market is kind of what is going to be is what's going to kind of carry the banner of succeeding in this fight. And they already are because the private market outweighs the public parking by 4 to 1. So I mean, so there's for every four private parking spots, whether that be truck stop or otherwise, there's one public, and it's insane to think. And so just by numbers alone, since 2022, I believe there is some 700 million that was spent on truck parking, and it's added a little over 2,000 safe parking spots. But since 2022, Truck Parking Club has 2244 properties, and with that, we're talking over 35,000 new parking spaces, and that's just becoming a marketplace and getting these other people on. And so when you look at those numbers, obviously the private market is carrying its weight, but we want, and Truck Parking Club wants, we want, you want, drivers do want the public and local and state and federal governments to get involved. But when you have issues, this one right here is like one of those stories. I want to know your thoughts on this. Is in North Carolina, Robinson County. So not, which I don't believe. Well, no, it's far from you. This is off 95. Robinson County commissioners in North Carolina shot down a developer's request to build a new truck stop off I-95 on exit 7. Developer reduced the size of the project from up to 70 spaces to 15 to 20 because commissioners were concerned about keeping with the traditionally rural area. And I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, just hearing that from you, I think that this is because these commissioners probably have zero, not even a remote inkling about the truck parking issue. It kind of touches on what I said earlier, what you and I were talking about. A lot of these politicians, both on a local municipal level, a state level, a federal level, they have no earthly ideal that the truck parking crisis even exists, right? And, had they known how big of an issue this is, especially on the I-95 corridor, maybe they would have, wagered differently on that vote. But, I find that mildly hypocritical because these are the same areas along, these coastal areas where, guys are having a hard time getting, permits to build, parking infrastructure, even if they want to. These businesses are. And in a year or two, you'll see a massive housing development in place of where that would have eventually went. It's like, well, we can't afford to fork over, ground, 30, 40 extra truck parking spots, but by God, we can build, 3,000 or 4,000, apartments over here on this piece of land. So that's kind of the irony about it. But yeah, like I said, I think that really just shines a light, again, on what you and I were talking about earlier, which is the fact that these commissioners, these politicians, again, local municipal level, state level, federal level, they have no idea. I really don't think they have any inkling about the truck parking issue. And, so when they see truck stops wanting to build, to them, like you and I, we look at that and we're like, wow, we just lost the potential of having X amount of extra parking spaces those could have been places for people to park their truck. To them, they're just like, we don't, we just don't want to vote on that. So that's, again, I think that's why people need to do exactly what you guys are doing, what I'm trying to do, what we're all doing, which is bring it, shine a light on this issue and make people aware of it. So hopefully they can make the right decision in future instances where it comes to, voting on stuff like this.
Yeah, man. So I got to ask you, you're a Tennessee guy. Do you get down to Monteagle at all?
Yeah, I go through there. I go through there probably at least like 3 or 4 times a month. Yeah.
Because this one I find funny because because a truck stop developer, what TA to name them, is taking a Tennessee city to court. They're so TA is facing future litigation. So a developer who wanted to build a new TA in Mont Eagle is suing the city over his right to do so because a few years ago the city approved the truck stop, but it ultimately reneged on the permit. And according to WDEF, the developer is currently trying to restore his property rights in the courtroom. The proposed TA Petra would add more truck parking along I-24 right at exit 135. I mean, that's a tough area.
Very, very tough. Yeah, that's the first thing that pops in my mind. You say Mont Eagle, I mean, you're looking basically between Chattanooga and Nashville. There's hardly anything through there, and the truck stops that do exist, they're full, not just in the evening, but pretty much all the time. Up when you're talking about Mont Eagle, I mean, you've got, I think it's a Flying J or a Pilot up on the top of the mountain up there, and that's pretty much your only option, and it's very, very small. I think also I want to touch on this real quick. When it comes to these municipalities that are pushing back against this, we're seeing this in the form of them passing, city codes that are now banishing trucks from parking in areas where they previously were able to park as well. There's a very, very big pushback, both in the situation that you referenced and in other areas where these city officials they just don't like trucks, right? They're big, they're noisy, they're in the way, they're slow, and people just don't like that. And I think that is also the other variable that goes into this. They just don't want trucks in their area, which is crazy to me if you have a city where you have a major interstate running through. But again, these people, they care more about keeping the noise down and not having trucks. And to some level, I get it. Guys come through and they'll rip wires down. They'll truck signs and stuff like that. But we're seeing this is the other issue. I mean, we're seeing, again, municipalities start to push back more and more and tighten down on restrictions on where trucks can go. No parking here. We're not going to give you a permit to build a truck stop because we don't want trucks here. And that's also another big issue. So I hope that, I don't know what the answer to that would be, but I hope we can see the tables kind of shift with that, where these municipalities stop doing that and they start, welcoming trucks back into their community, where they're supposed to be, of course. But, that's becoming a huge issue.
I can understand it. A certain, we have zoning laws for reasons like, obviously we don't want a coal plant next to a school.
Yeah,
right. You don't need to, you don't put an oil refinery right next. You're not going to have an oil refinery right next to a farm, so to speak, or something along like common sense zoning laws. And obviously, you're not going to put truck parking in. You're not going to put a huge truck parking lot, right next to. I'm trying to think. You're not going to put it in downtown Nashville, like next to Broadway. But if every 4 years, elections and local elections as well, the number one word and the number one thing on everybody's mind is economy. We want economy. We want economy. We want to grow the economy. We want to grow the economy. And an economic growth is on the back of one thing and one thing only. It means that there's going to be more freight coming your way.
Absolutely. Yep. That's 100% true. And, people don't understand, over 70% of the freight in America that is hauled is done by truck. It's not by boat. It's not by rail. It's not by plane. It's by truck. And I try to get people to put this into perspective for themselves. If you can feel it, if you can touch it, if you can see it, unless it's growing on the earth, it's been on a truck. Like this, for an example, this shirt that I'm wearing, not just was the shirt itself put on a truck and taken to the store I bought it from, but think about all of the trucks it took to get the products to the manufacturer who built this, all the different materials, the dye for the cotton, the cotton itself, the brass for the buttons. I mean, all these different things, everything you can think of that is a man-made object has been on a truck or has been refined by man, has been on a truck. And, when the economy does well, trucking does very well. And unfortunately, we saw a bit of a decline with that, I think, after COVID, post-COVID, because during COVID, there was a really big boom, and then, there was a high demand for freight, and then everything died back down. And during that big boom, a lot of people got into the trucking industry. So, we're certainly well capable of handling another influx in demand, if it comes in the trucking industry, which I hope it does. And, truckers stimulate the economy. I mean, like if you build a massive truck stop in a very small town somewhere, that does stimulate the economy. It does. Truckers spend money when they go park at places, and it brings business in. So both on a local level and just a federal economic level, I really hope to see the economy pick back up and guys be able to fill that gap and start making more money. And then also the cities, be able to profit off that as well. And realize the opportunity they have to let truck drivers into their communities and give them a place to park.
Yeah, man. What you just said actually reminds me of a podcast I listened to called Over the Road, and it was the gentleman who hosts it. His name is Long Haul Paul. He's or Paul Marhofer.
Yeah.
You know who he is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one of the most influential guys, and has a heart of gold. And on that show, he's talking to a woman who's she works, I believe she works at a truck stop in Eastern Kentucky, and if she had, like she said on the show, like where if she had all the money in the world or had an opportunity, like she would build an interstate that went through the town she lives in Eastern Kentucky, because it would essentially save the town where she's from.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
just off of that alone. So it's awesome to think about that.
Just real quick, I'll tell you. So I grew up in a really, really small town called Baileyton, Tennessee. We Belton, Tennessee, and it's off of I-81 in eastern Tennessee at exit 36. If you're a truck driver, there's really no there. There's a little pilot, and a lot of guys are familiar with that truck stop. But that town. I mean, if you even want to call it a town, I mean, there's a school, there's a police department with one cop, and it's like Mayberry, North Carolina, from the Andy Griffith Show. It's like that type of town, and that trucks. I mean, those handful of truck stops right there. That is the town, right? It's not that there's a town with truck stops. There's truck stops with a town, right? I mean, those truck stops, and I mean, there's a campground down the road. People stop in their RVs just to get fuel, and they're like, oh, hey, there's a campground down the road. Let me go spend money there. Let me go stay the night there. There's some locally owned pizza places down the road. There's some locally owned businesses down the road, and there's always truck drivers. I see them all the time walking down there, coming back up, doing business. So, like I said, truck drivers typically spend money where they park, and these municipalities hopefully one day will realize that we're like everybody else. One of the big reasons why they want to allow developers to build things is so they can stimulate the economy, right? That's one of the big reasons why commissioners vote in favor of these things, and trucking is no different. We're going to spend money. We're going to stimulate your local economy, and hopefully they can realize that. And in the future, when they get posed with the position of being able to choose to bring in or not bring in a truck stop, they'll choose obviously in favor of that.
Yeah, man. That's why we keep making content. That's why we do this live stream. That's why we do all this stuff. And I mean, and we're going to keep having these conversations so that way guys like the Secretary of Transportation can see it. That way, other politicians can see it, and we can talk on these issues. And Landline's got a couple more, and it's great. I mean, these companies on here, TA Sheets is getting into some trouble in Detroit. They've got money to spare on this issue, and it's so it's wild to think that people with some of the biggest pockets are having the toughest time. But kind of, because I didn't want to take up your entire night. I know you're out there grinding. I did want to know a little bit, because you talked about COVID and demand, and we saw people go into the market. What is trucking looking like for you right now? You're driving your own truck? You got your own authority? What are you up to? What's keeping you busy?
Yeah, so I don't have my own authority. I am an owner operator, leased on to another company, and so post COVID has been very, very rough. I touched on this a second ago. I'll try to be short-winded on this, but people need to hear this, because a lot of people don't realize this. When COVID came around, there was a temporary, and I want to underscore and embolden the word temporary, supply chain crisis. And we had enough trucks to handle it. But anytime when it comes to the freight market, where you have too much freight and not enough trucks necessarily, the freight rates go up, and the power to negotiate is in the hand of the carrier, not so much as in the hand of the broker, because brokers have no choice but to pay what the carriers want if they want their freight moved, right? Well, when COVID came along and the freight rates were up because of that boom in the market, a lot of currently existing motor carriers and a lot of new motor carriers flooded the market. I mean, absolutely flooded the market with trucks. And pretty much any economist could have told you that this influx in freight was not going to be forever. It was going to eventually die down, and it did. And now post COVID, this also affects the truck parking issue. We have a massive surplus of trucks out on the road and not enough freight to go around because this temporary supply chain crisis where there's a bunch of demand for freight to be moved is no longer existent. So all of these guys who showed up and said, hey, look at me, I'm here to report for duty and help with the supply chain crisis, they've got nothing to do. They've either been laid off or they're just lounging around truck stops most days trying to, maybe get a load. I mean, the load boards are just as cutthroat as trying to get a truck parking spot out here at a truck stop. I mean, when something pops up, it's like a bunch of piranhas, coming at it. And so the freight market's been very slow. And up, it's like a bloodbath to get them. I'm hoping that we start to see a shift with that. The only way that that's going to happen is either A, we raise demand and we start having more freight that needs to be hauled, or B, we thin out the trucks that are on the road. I don't really know what that would look like as far as thinning trucks out, but I do know a lot of companies, even like US Express was a huge one, laying people off. Pretty extensively. Heartland Express, that's a huge company. They put out a statement, I believe it was last fiscal year in 2024, that the only reason they were profitable on paper was from them selling off old equipment in 2024. So it's not just the small guys that are feeling this. The big companies are definitely feeling the ripple effects also. And there was, I don't remember what year it was. I think it might have been somewhere, one of those years right after COVID. It's like 2022 maybe. I think there was over 800,000 motor carriers that basically went out of business. Sure, some of that could have been bad, but it just goes to show you that the economy is definitely not in favor of the truck driver right now. But there's a lot of people still holding in there like me, hoping it gets better, and I hope it gets better. Yeah, I really do.
No, yeah, I was going to say, are you primarily getting your freight through load boards?
Primarily, yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I would love at some point to be able to cultivate sort of some of those direct customer relations. It's really hard to do that because brokers, and this is not a knock on brokers, by the way, but brokers do kind of dominate that market. Obviously, that's their job, that's their business model, is to work with customers and post the freight for drivers. So there's less and less, big, companies or small companies out there who want to work direct with carriers. But sometimes it's mutually beneficial for both parties. You can find that. So, maybe that's where I'm going to shift to. But yeah, currently right now, just working straight off the load board pretty much every single day. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. But you yourself, you got a pretty dope truck. What are you riding?
2001 379 Peterbilt. It's pretty much stock. It's got a new set of paint on it. It's got well over 2 million miles, so it's not a show truck. It's got a Caterpillar engine under the hood, 355 rears, 13 speed, and I love this truck, man. It's definitely rough sometimes when it comes. Like I've had the AC go out on this thing I don't know how many times, and I've been the dude rolling around with his underwear on, no shirt, windows down because I don't have AC. Old truck problems, but nothing against new trucks, but I just love, I think of this truck as a time machine. I always think of this truck, like if I could zoom out, look at a map of America and highlight every single piece of asphalt this truck has been on over the last almost 25 years, I bet the whole map would glow, right? I love history and I love stuff like that. And I think this truck's a rolling piece of history, and it's a reminder for me of what the industry used to be. That's why I love driving it so much.
No, I think it's important that those trucks stay on the road. I romanticize. I mean, I'm just as romantic about my own car, and to think it's a 2011. It's a 2011 Camaro that I
Yeah.
bought when it was brand new. But yet I've been to I've driven it. I've done a road trip around the entire country with it. I've moved it to Texas. It's gone up to Canada. It's it's done all this amazing stuff, and it's like 2011 obviously isn't that long ago, but there's a reason it's special that iron stays on the road almost for the same reasons, and it's crazy when if you notice, that's like when it comes to the truck parking club, like on our social media, we're regularly posting those pictures because that's exactly what needs to be shown. Like that's what needs to be shown more of. Not that there's all this new tech and there's all this new stuff and drive trains, and we can talk about that till the cows come home. But like really, like when people think of the industry, they think of exactly the type of truck you're driving.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, somebody as young as I am, like I said, I got into trucking early 2020. That's when I turned 21, so I'm still pretty young. That is a time like when this truck was rolled off the assembly line. I was like 8 months old, right? It's a 2001, but it rolled off the line in 2000. So it's like, to me, I think back to that era, and it's an era I didn't get to experience. So it's even that much more like gripping for me to have a truck like this and be able to drive it every day. And I have guys come up to me all the time because this truck is pretty much stock for the most part. And I love the big stretched out trucks, drop bumpers, chicken lights. Guys come up to me and they're like, "Hey, this is what I remember these trucks looking like when I back when they came off the lot." And they always think it's pretty neat. So it's always a good conversation starter for sure.
Yeah, where would you did you buy it like locally? Did you have to travel to go get it?
So I'm still paying on it currently to a gentleman out of Indiana who I'm leased on to right now with. So the story of this truck, a gentleman had it before me. I believe he was the original owner. This truck, it's really cool. If you open the door, there's still inspection stickers from when it was leased on to Warner from back in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, where they've just kind of hole punched them and put them on the door. And so this truck had a history at Warner. That guy had it for like pretty much most of its life, and he eventually went to the guy that I'm working for, and he had some health problems, and ended up kind of selling him the truck, I believe, and then he sold it to me. And I always wanted to work for myself, even if it meant making less money. I didn't care. I like the ideal of being self-employed in a sense. And obviously anybody who's self-employed can tell you have to work twice. There is no like, hey, it's easier being self-employed. No, you work like sometimes twice as hard. I mean, there's days where this truck breaks down. I'm on the side of the road. I'm sweaty. I'm dirty. I'm working on it. It sucks. But like, I think, well, I could just be a company driver and not have to do that. But it's also very, very rewarding to know that you're kind of like working your way up from the ground up. And that's what I'm trying to do with this truck and with this. I'd eventually like to get my own, authority and go that route. But, 6 years is a small drop in the bucket of experience compared to some guys out here. So I'm still learning a lot, trying to figure out a lot. And, hopefully one day that can come to fruition, have my own authority, maybe start a little company up or something. But yeah.
Dude, and I'll make. I'd like to make it a kind of a life goal to no matter what the people who I'm surrounded with and people in kind of in my circle, and no matter what is helping them win. And for gentlemen such as yourself, you're somebody who wants to leave the industry better than you found it. Truck Parking Club wants to help you win. I personally want to help you win, and that's we're definitely going to be gunning for you. And I'm if you're fighting through kind of this market now, and you're fighting through some of the so I'm telling like I'm an endurance guy, and when it comes to like kind of ultra events and like long distance running, there's lows, there's lows, there's the pain cave as we call it, but then there's these highs you get, and those highs are like what we live for. And I think it's the same thing for an entrepreneur and for somebody who's getting into business. Is like the lows are low, and they're going to feel really low, but that when those highs are coming, you're like, there's just so much, you're ready to take it on and ready to be bold and dominate.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you said, I mean, the highs for me definitely outweigh the lows a lot, and it's like you get really, really low, but then you have like a good run, and it's like, well, this is worth it, right? I mean, to see the fruits of your labor is good. A huge part of endurance sports, I'm sure, is just like obviously persevering through the entire deal, right? Getting from point A to point B and doing whatever it takes to get to point B, to get to the finish line. And that's kind of how I look at it. I feel like I'm in kind of like an endurance sprint right now. And I mean, yeah, like you said, there's the pain cave. There's a lot of lows, but there's also a lot of highs. And I'll tell you, if you can reach the finish line, I'm sure that's going to be, hopefully for me, and I'm sure, some of the endurance stuff you've done, once you reach that finish line and you cross that line, it makes all of the pain and suffering worth it in the end.
Couldn't have said it better myself, but dude, yeah, I don't want to take up your whole night. I'm going to walk this one out, hang out for a few minutes in the studio, and while I wrap this up.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Hey guys, that'll do it for this Monday night's Truck Parking Clubhouse. I hope you guys have an amazing 4th of July weekend. Don't forget, what this holiday means and what it stands for. We are blessed every day that we are able to live and work in a great country like the United States. No matter where you're from, no matter where you're tuning in from, coast to coast, whether you're in Laredo to Duluth, either way, it's a great. I mean, there's no better time to be alive than right now, and there's no better time to be alive in America than right now. So I wish you all a happy 4th of July. And again, if you are somebody who wants to leave the industry better than you found it, and you want to work with, work with a brand and work with individuals who are trying to do the exact same thing, again, feel free to shoot any of our socials a DM. Find me, Lombard Trucking, anywhere. We'd love to get you on board working with us to have these conversations on the Clubhouse. We've got the newsletter. We are regularly involved in so much stuff to help, to help the industry out there and to help, kind of get your message out there, your brand, while also helping drivers, find new ways to get some parking and also give them some free parking along the way. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to give me a holler. And as Ralph just dropped it, yes, please, 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 if you are drinking this weekend, do not drive, hang up the keys, throw them away, lose the keys, no matter what. But either way, have a happy and safe 4th of July, and we'll see you guys next week.